This is the Business of Apps podcast, bringing you actionable insights from the leaders of the global app industry and the world's fastest growing apps. You can find more app news, data and analysis over at businessofapps.com.
Welcome to the Business of Apps podcast. On this show, we invite app industry professionals to cover various topics. We promise to do our best to keep it both insightful but brief. In this episode, we have Amrick Chauhan, lead product manager at Which App. Amrick, welcome to the Business of Apps podcast.
Hi, Art. Thanks for having me.
Terrific. Thank you for coming. Okay, expectations versus reality. This theme is old as this world. In so many walks of life, we set our expectations high. We're driven by optimism, which on itself is a great quality, but sometimes it may lead you to a very frustrating experience. Mobile app development and marketing can be one of the brightest examples, especially when venture capital is involved and the expectations that app projects will deliver quick returns are high. Today, we have Amrick to tell us the story of expectations versus reality of developing and launching an app called Which. But first, before jumping on the topic, Amrick, please tell us about yourself a bit. What is your background in mobile?
Yeah, so I'm Amrick, and I've actually been building digital products for I think the past 15 or so years, and that's been across a broad range of things from websites to platforms, and more recently, right the way through to mobile apps. So I think in that time, I've seen a lot of change in the technology space. It's evolving so rapidly. I've always had a specific interest in mobile apps. I'm just generally a very curious person, and I've been lucky enough to have worked across many different companies in that time. So right in the early stages of my career, I worked for the Financial Times and worked on some apps there. And then later on, I've worked at Nando's, which is very popular here in the UK, on their app, and I've also worked for KFC launching their brand new app across Western Europe. And yeah, now more recently, I joined Which a couple of years ago now to build out a new mobile app strategy. And as part of that, we've launched a new app as well.
That's pretty diverse career from KFC to Which. Yeah, that's like, to me, as diverse as it can get to cover that broad spectrum of different apps. But let's talk about Which app. Before I read about the app, I wasn't sure. Are we talking about pronoun witch or like a witch hunt? Which. So
Well,
obviously we're talking about pronoun, but what's the app is about?
yeah, I give you a gist of who Which are as an organization. So we're the UK's consumer champion. So if you're listening outside of the UK, you might not have heard of us. We're a not-for-profit organization which has a charitable mission as well. So that's where we identify, anticipate, and expose consumer harm. And we try to identify solutions and act to prevent harm. So whether that's by empowering and equipping consumers, to avoid and tackle harm with direct advice, or whether it's challenging and supporting policymakers, people like MPs and members of parliament to do better, right the way through to challenging and supporting businesses to do better as well. So that could be as simple as, providing advice on which washing machine to buy. It sounds very trivial, but there's a lot of consumer detriment in everyday products where you want to buy something that should last, and if a business isn't if they're not making products, if they're making products that are just going to break down in a couple of years, well, we think that's not okay. So all of the revenue that we generate from our commercial operation, subscriptions, for example, funds this charitable work that we do. And prior to me joining Which, our mobile products were really underinvested in and were not seen as a core part of the user journey and our proposition. And that's, of course, changing for us as it is for most organizations around the world as we see consumer habits change. So when I joined Which, my early focus was to build out this new mobile strategy for our mobile apps. And now the app has over 10,000 product reviews. So you can find anything from reviews that we've done on mattresses right through to TVs, boilers, all kinds of things. And now we're working hard to add more of our content that we produce and you can find on our website, but bringing that into the app as well, so that we can open it up so that you don't have to necessarily be a member to find and consume our content.
That's quite an interesting concept because before I knew about your app, I would go to Quora to ask a question about the product, but obviously I would be given a lot of answers that were not given like people who are really know what they're talking about. Can be consumers who may just give me their opinion, not the opinion of a professional who can really evaluate the product and give me the answer. Is it safe? Is it something I really need to consider? So this is kind of a dedicated to empowering consumer, giving them right information, but in a way, it's a kind of a Q&A in that respect as a Quora, right?
Almost. I think we provide impartial, unbiased reviews and advice. So we, unlike a lot of organizations like Quora and places like Reddit and things like that, where a lot of the revenue that they make is through ads.
Right, exactly.
We don't serve ads because we are completely unbiased. So the commercial element of our proposition is what funds our charitable work, and that helps to keep us impartial. So if a product is bad, we will say it's bad. We will actually have a don't buy label on our app and on our website as well, which we would advise you don't buy this product because it's not good. Whereas I think in other places, we've done a lot of work recently exposing the system that is fake reviews, and you probably, a lot of people listening will maybe have experienced some kind of fake review in the past, whether it's looking at Amazon. How much can you trust what you're reading? I think that's maybe one of the key questions there, and we try to remove or we try to bring in that impartiality to what we write about and how we kind of produce our content.
Yeah, that's really great, helpful thing to help people to really see the value of try to mitigate all the problems that fake reviews bring to the consumer market. Because but people who buy products on Amazon, they rely on reviews, and like the whole idea, like reviews on the App Store, there's kind of a related story, with the fake reviews over the years when people were buying reviews in bulks from people who never tried those products. They were just providing, reviews for money, not actually trying any particular app. Want to improve your app marketing skills? Know how to fight back mobile fraud? Or how to launch an influencer marketing campaign? You've got it all at the Business of Apps Insights. Opinion, how-tos, thought leadership, and analysis from global app and social media industry. Visit our Insights section at businessofapps.com/insights/podcast. And now, back to the show. Now, in late March, you were part of the App Promotion Summit in London, and you told a great story of how expectations of your team and which were smashed by the harsh reality. So, in particular, you brought 3 key lessons you had learned. So let's lay them out for the audience one by one. Assumptions about the product features, assumptions about deadlines, and assumptions about the quick success.
It was quite interesting for me because I had a chance to reflect on the journey of building and launching an app. And so that first assumption about product features was really us having the expectation that we knew what we needed to build. Well, we thought we did. And it was only until we had a beta app, that we then deployed onto TestFlight, and we actually tested that app with a small group of our customers. And I think that's when we got that reality check that some of our assumptions that we made early on were wrong. Not all of them, but some of them. And I think we then realized just how important it was to get that beta out there quickly, to be able to learn quickly as well, what was working, what wasn't working. And I think this really does get to the heart of the need of understanding the problem space very thoroughly. And then the second assumption was, deadlines. In our case, it was about timing our launch. When should you launch an app? And I think for us, there were a few conversations internally about when we should launch the app. And at the App Promotion Summit, I spoke briefly about the triangle of constraints. I'm not sure what the exact term is, but it's where you have cost, time, and scope. And when you prioritize one of those items, more often than not, one or both of the others has to give way. Like, for example, if you prioritize scope, well, you probably need more time to deliver it. So that's the thing that's going to have to be negotiated. And for us, I think we felt, and I felt in particular, that we should prioritize time, because I simply felt that it was important that we press forward with replacing a lot of the legacy tech that had been built up over time. And especially considering that we had a solid pace of shipping products. So we were shipping app updates in quick succession, one app update every week. It just gave us a lot of confidence that we could catch up the scope element of that triangle. So
Yeah.
I think, my advice for the audience really is you kind of need to make a judgment call on what is right for your business and in your scenario for the app. But keep in mind that no one is going to remember when you launch. Like, does anybody like, if you look on your home screen on your smartphone right now, do you remember when any of those apps actually landed in the App Store? For the most part, like for 99, like exactly, like no, like for 99% of apps on your device, if not more, you won't remember when they actually launch. So just my advice is get your product out there as quickly as you can, begin learning. That's when you know what's working for your customers and what isn't, and then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's not the point of remembering the specific date when the app was launched, unless, I don't know, if it's the Pokemon Go, something which is a part of a culture, but we don't have a lot of apps that are part of the culture on that level. For the vast bulk of apps, it doesn't matter at all. And well, what are your, like, you have three assumptions. So the last one was about the quick success. So how did it play out for the app? What was off?
Yeah, like I think, like we live in a world now where we hear stories about instant success. This app grew to 1 million
Exponential
subscribers in a
growth.
week.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like that. We don't really hear the story behind that success quite often. We see the one-liners, we see those snippets of success, but actually building a successful app takes time. And my advice here is that think about the long-term position of your app. Maybe in certain scenarios, if you're a much bigger brand like Nintendo, and you're launching Pokemon Go or something like that, maybe you got to think quite carefully about how and when you launch and your strategy around that. But for most companies, I think thinking about the long-term positioning of your app and the strategy around that's what I think my advice is to focus on.
Yeah, that's totally a valid point. You have to over the years I've been hearing this kind of a struggle between two ways of dealing with app production. Some people never deliver. They perfect every detail for weeks, months. They want to deliver every possible feature in the version one because they believe the first impression will be paramount for their success, which is not a they may have a point, but when it takes so much time to deliver your first version of your app, and your competition is light years ahead of you, you're just missing your market. And on the other part, you may deliver the app that is kind of a half baked, but the like in my for my mind, the best approach, if you look at Apple, what they do with apps or products, the first version delivers not every possible imaginable feature you would like to have in that product, but the ones it does deliver, it does really great, nice, and robust. And there's always a way you can continue to interact, continue to deliver more versions of the same product, and retaining the audience you're getting with each iteration. But that's just impossible to be able to put into the product every idea you have in the
Yeah.
in the inception of your product. So now, over the years, I heard stories from app developers that were quite similar to your story. As time goes by, people repeat the same mistakes over and over. It's just part of our human nature. But we're not going to try to, go to the aroma psychology and see if we can answer the question why people are doing that. But let's try to give kind of a strategical advice on the mindset that will help them to avoid doing those mistakes.
Yeah, I love this question, actually. I think a lot of it comes down to the culture that you have within the company. There are some obvious mistakes that you should avoid doing, things like choosing the right tech stack, hiring, etc. But I don't think anyone should really be afraid of making mistakes per se. And actually, like, making mistakes is healthy because it helps us learn faster.
Right.
I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give anyone is to find ways to bring a product mindset on how to build an app into your company. And I think this is really important because it's as much as how you go about solving problems than the problem itself. So things like, using data to make informed decisions, doing research yourself, speaking to customers to understand the problem space a lot better, and then prototyping and testing ideas at pace. I think often that kind of stuff is overlooked, and you tend to go down different rabbit holes and make mistakes, and trivial mistakes if you don't do those kinds of things. And I think that really then helps you to understand your customers better, and it gives your app a much better chance of being successful.
So only people who do nothing do not make any mistakes. It's just part of the deal. You should be ready for making your own mistakes. It's unavoidable, but your mindset should be ready for that moment and know how to deal with that, how to mitigate the problem. Like I would suggest people not to be very consumed by the mistakes and spend time on kind of an emotional reaction. Try to get over it faster.
Yeah.
Like Steve Jobs used to say, do not look back, leave that legacy behind. It's over, it's the past. And let's just learn the mistake and move forward. Now, looking back at your experience of working with various apps, what app category do you find the most challenging to build apps for?
Yeah, I don't think it's an easy question to answer, actually, because there are nuances in every industry. Like, for example, building an app in an industry that's heavily regulated, like banking and finance, that's always going to be harder, as you might not be able to move as quickly as you like. Maybe the challenges are less about the category, but more about, like, maybe there's two things that I would call out. One is the technology. Like, are you dealing with legacy tech that needs to be modernized in parallel with running your app? Or do you have a clean slate and the ability to select the right platforms for the kind of app that you're building? I think it gets more and more complicated when you're building an app for a company that has other platforms too, like web, voice, and so on. Do you need a common platform to serve content to both of those products, like app and web, and so on and so forth? And I think that's where a lot of the complexity comes in, and that isn't an easy step, and always poses huge challenges in every industry. And maybe the second thing that I would say is around people and culture. Your app might be a great idea, but without the right people and culture to deliver those ideas in the way that I mentioned, having that product mindset, um, culture of build, measure, learn, talking to your customers, rapidly prototyping and testing validating your assumptions, it's just going to be a massive challenge.
Now, we are transitioning to the second part of the show where I always get a chance to ask every guest just a few quick questions because I want to not only bring people value, giving the insight on a specific topic, I want people to know my guest a little bit better. Here we go. So, quick questions. Question number one: what smartphone do you have now? Have you been switching between these two giants or just staying one side all the time?
I'm definitely an Apple fanboy. I use an iPhone 12 Pro Max right now, and I'll probably get the new iPhone when it comes out this year. I think I've had iPhones from when they first came out. I do now have a Samsung S7 too, but I only really use that for work and for testing our app. I think one thing I would add is that I think on the hardware side, maybe Android is slightly ahead with things like the Pixel and Samsung phones. But for me, iOS is just streets ahead with the operating system, especially when you think about the user experience.
Yeah, totally get it. And plus, I would assume you have a lot of stuff from the Apple's ecosystem, music, movies, games, and stuff,
Exactly.
all
Yeah.
in one package.
Yeah,
Um,
Apple One and Google have something similar, but my kids they hound me to get the Apple Arcade, so I've got that. I've got Apple
mhm.
Music, and it's just easy to use. I think that's the key thing. I think I take inspiration from that when thinking about how we build product apps. How I've built apps in the past and what we're doing now at Which.
Yeah, it's a really good model to try to repeat in your business. What was your first mobile phone? Let's jump back before iPhone era, before that famous
Wow.
presentation by Steve Jobs.
Was
Flip
there anything
phones.
before the iPhone?
There was
I
life
think
before iPhone. I
yeah.
do remember.
My first phone was a Nokia 3010. Like very nostalgic thinking back about it now. I mean, you could make a phone call, you could send a text message. I think it had this game called Snakes, which was really addictive.
Yeah.
I think, part of me misses those days as, things seemed a lot simpler.
Now, right now, for whatever reason, you're going out and you're forgetting your smartphone at home. Your iPhones keep sitting on your sofa. What would be the most missing feature for you when you're out?
Most missing feature, I think Apple Pay, probably without a doubt. I mean, sometimes nowadays I just leave my wallet at home, knowing that I can just pay for things with my
Mhm.
phone if I need to, pop to the shops. I think definitely that would be the most the thing that I'd miss the most.
Yeah, the same here. I I tend to do the same thing, and every time I kind of became a little bit worried that my wallet is home. But well, for what reason do I need those credit cards if I can just use Apple Pay anywhere pretty much by this point? Now, probably there's something that is missing on the hardware software side of your iPhone that you would like to see in the future updates. Something that you not necessarily that like features where you can see on a tech radar like something that people are expecting, but for you personally, would you like to see something different in the hardware software for your iPhone?
I think it's quite interesting because like when I think about the future, we probably won't be using smartphones in the way that we're using them now. I think about things like augmented reality, virtual reality, voice as well. Um, I do think when Apple eventually make their play into this world, especially like AR and VR, maybe they
Mhm.
come up with their own hardware. I think that's when things like, virtual reality, augmented reality will hit the mainstream in a way that it hasn't done just yet. And so but perhaps that's a long way off. Who knows with Apple, right? It could be this year, it might not be, it might be in 5 years, who knows? Um, I think that's something that I'm looking forward to. It's slightly off topic of a smartphone, but I think with both Apple and Android, the tie-in with how those devices will work with your smartphone, I think will be quite interesting to see how that shapes up. And then obviously the tie off with other things in your home, speakers now play a massive part in my home anyway. TV now, most TVs are smart TVs,
Right.
and then it extends. Your washing machine can now be smart, your fridge can be smart. I think those kind of things, or there's connected devices, Internet of Things. Again, they're not highly talked about, in mainstream media, but I think eventually they will all be connected. Um, so I think that's going to be quite interesting to see how that plays out in the next decade or two.
Right. It remains to be seen if Apple will choose to go with the so much talked about, but never seen the day of light. The automobile project, people are expecting a car from Apple, which is
Yeah.
a big thing. Could be that they may shift their focus on creating their own car, which can be actually part of the Internet of Things of your home, just the extension. Or, I mean, it could be both the augmented reality and the car. We'll see. It's hard to predict, and that's part of the appeal of Apple. We're expecting something cool new that is not foreseeable, at least not to the every detail that people may expect. Okay, before I let you go, there's just very final question. How people can get in touch with you and get more information about what you do?
Yeah, just reach out to me. I'm mainly on LinkedIn. I'm not really active on most other social media aside from LinkedIn, but I'm always happy to connect with, like-minded people that are building apps and other products.
Great. Amrick, thank you. Thanks a lot for your time and being on our podcast. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Art. Thanks.
And that was Amrick Chauhan, Lead Product Manager at Which App. To listen to more episodes, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Just search for Business of Apps and you will find us easily. We release episodes on Mondays, so subscribe and you will be able to get new episodes on your smartphone, tablet, or computer as soon as we release them. And please don't forget to leave us a review or comment on iTunes. It is highly appreciated. And all episodes will also be available on businessofapps.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Business of Apps podcast. For more, head on over to businessofapps.com.